a Navy's component, it's an Army's component, because the fact remains it's flying.
Right.
So we need to look at integration of each of these services within themselves, whereas I started off that we leverage on our strengths and we mitigate the other sister services.
What about the shortcomings? Do you see that there are shortcomings that we have to put our focus on?
There are shortcomings in our present-day structure for sure, but we have to take an inclusive approach where nobody feels left out.
Right.
I mean, if you really look at why United Nations were a success up till a point in time, and Treaty of Versailles did not succeed, was because after Treaty of Versailles, there were victors and there were people who were defeated. But when United Nations initially came in, everybody thought that we are equal participants in the New World Order.
Right.
And that's what kept Third World War away till a recent developments where now you have people saying that, well, it's my pie and it's my pie, and it's a different subject altogether. So the issue is that whatever comes through, whatever solution the government of the day decides, it has to be a win-win situation for all. It can't be that one element feels left out and the other element feels that I won it.
Okay. Air Vice Marshal Tiwari, if I may ask you, because the debate is all about the air littoral too. Who really controls that space? When I spoke to a few within the army, they said that there is no debate about it, and you cannot have perhaps a distinction between who really controls that particular space, because there, in changing times, there is going to be overlapping. Would you agree that somewhere down the line we will have to make do with this kind of overlapping that takes place, and challenges will come up and we will have to find a joint solution to the
challenge will always come up. I'll just say turf is one, India. Win and win situation is one for India. We are all working to require the security of our territory, our boundary. Okay? Right now, India's requirement is the western border and the northern border. We don't have a theaters like Pacific Command Theater, like America has got. They've got far to yet. Now, what has happened? All the headquarters are together. There's integration. Nobody take action on its own. It's already existing. Just to make somebody a theater commander, look after everything, okay, it is good. In the larger form, when you have surplus forces, surplus aircraft, surplus equipments, you can have it. Okay, one is dedicated to you. Now, what sort of more coordination you require? What happened in the Sindoor? What was the more coordination required in 71? I'll get back to 71 also. See what is happening in Bangladesh. At the same time, Air Force took a task and destroyed a lot of important air bases and Karachi. So all this destruction was taking place a parallel movement, because all the transport aircrafts were provided to airdrop or Jawans and officers in the Bangladesh. At the same time, it took out the western border. That brought the Pakistan on the back foot. Now, what happened? There's somebody dedicated and trained and who has been always in touch with the enemy's aircraft, missiles, how they're functioning. So we are also working on the same line, how to avoid them and how to counter them and how to get one step ahead. So just for sake of making a theater, turf, remember turf, as I say, turf is only one. Turf is the country. Bharat Desh is the boundary. And where is the boundary of right now? It's only western border, northern border. We don't have to go to Australia. We don't have to go to western. Okay, in future will come. Accordingly, country will decide. But right now at this moment, with the constraint of the resources, and what is existing, it is very, very good and exceptional. What has happened? Now, what happens in Bangladesh? Now, what happens is now everybody in Delhi, communication network is so good. So, we are on the same foot. Nobody objects to what decision you have taken. However, the decision is common. You sit down on the table. Achievement target is this. What is the role of Army? What is the role of Navy? What is the Air Force? This is an integration. It is already existing. Just to give a formal name. Okay, it is beautiful, good. I cannot say that in the future we will have it. But right now we are in the correct shape and correct indications. And now who knows the best? I cannot hand over a tank to the Air Force pilot or Air Force officer who can handle. He can handle anything. He cannot get to the Navy. But at the same time, when a discussion is on all three services and say objective is same, then Navy can say, I can do this thing, but I require so much from Air Force. Army can say, I can do this one, but you require Air Force from this. So all discussions are taking place. We should not get really worked up if this is not working place and so on. Remember, we always remember country.
Right. I think so. We seem to have lost the line with Air Vice Marshal Tiwari there. One final word that I want to give you, General Narasimhan, one with regards to your assessment of the current situation, particularly some of the statements that have been made in the last few months, Raksha Mantri with regards to Sir Creek, and immediately thereafter the Pakistanis scrambling and reaching Sir Creek and starting the operations. Now you have a naval warning that has been put out. I want a final assessment that you are making of the situation and the exercise happening in the western border itself, General Narasimhan.
Sir Creek has always been an issue because there is an unsettled kind of a border out there, approximately about 90 to 100 kilometers of border. So this has always been an issue. If you take your mind back, there was a shooting down of a Pakistani plane sometime back, about 10, 12 years back. So these things actually, this area has been vulnerable, and we have been actually trying to boost up our capabilities out there. So what we are now trying to do with Tri Shakti is the way the warfare is evolving, that we need to understand. Theaterization is an issue that, that will get resolved at some point in time. The issue that we need to understand is how the warfare is evolving and how we need to face it. So that is what is actually this Tri-Shakti is trying to achieve. So as I mentioned to you, it is not only land forces, air forces or naval forces. It is also the other areas of domains that are coming into play, like cyber, space, electromagnetic spectrum, drones, counter drones. These are all evolving. These need to be all the resources of the three services need to be marshaled and integrated in a manner that, we are able to face the kind of opposition that we will face in the West. So while the statements have come up of what RM said and what the chief said, the Pakistani side also is building up their own defenses, etc. And they're also conducting an exercise between, I think, November 2nd and 5th. So the thing is that we need to be prepared at all times. All the three services have to work integrated manner. Therefore, this exercise. And so I think that is the way we need to see it. Theaterization will come. Whenever it comes, I'm sure whenever the powers that be takes the call, it will come. That we will wait and see. But the fact of the matter remains, all the three services have to be integrated. They have to fight together, and they have to face the opposition that we are going to have, both in the present domains and in the domains that are evolving. I think that is what we need to be looking.
Well, thank you very much, General Narasimhan, Air Vice Marshal Tiwari and Rear Admiral Mishra for joining us on this broadcast. It's always a pleasure having you all on Republic TV. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, that's all that we could pack in this edition of This is Exclusive. Over the next few days, while there will be a lot of political activity taking place, of course, in Bihar, the focus will also be on the military exercises that are taking place along the western border. And it's here on Republic TV that we'll get to every possible details of the exercises that are going to take place.
Co-powered by Century Ply Club Prime. Raho befikar.
Some places feel like they've been waiting for you, where every piece speaks of legacy, from diamonds that celebrate ambition to festive gold that honors tradition. LD Sons.
दादी के हाथों का जादू और खुशबू से महकता घर, माँ की मुस्कुराहट और खाने की सुगंध। MDH गरम मसाला,
क्योंकि हर रिश्ता है स्वाद से जुड़ा। केसरिया से मन जोगी हुआ रे, दिल झूमे देखो मतवारा हुआ रे। केसरिया से मन जोगी हुआ। हर पल मनाओ केसरी त्योहार। विमल, बोलो जुबान केसरी।
आर प्योर सूजी पास्ता उबालो, मिलाओ और खाओ।
8 मिनट में तैयार।
क्या टेस्ट है सबका राजा आर प्योर मसाला।
भारत की अपनी दुकान इंडिया सोना, अपने देश का सामान इंडिया सोना, इंडिया सोना,
इंडिया सोना।
MDH की देगी मिर्च,
देगी मिर्च का तड़का, अंग अंग फड़का।
MDH की देगी मिर्च।
For India. This week, we picked two. One from the global affairs and second from domestic politics. This week marked a tectonic shift in world politics. America blinked as China played its chess, poker-faced. The Busan meeting between Trump and Xi was optics. Real victory for Beijing came through a Rand Corporation report, which we analyze. On the domestic front, AIMIM chief Asaduddin Owaisi injected a dangerous proposition in Bihar campaign, that of proportional representation in governance. There's a history which we need to look at. You would understand why I call it dangerous. Let's get going.
Mr. President, the President of the People's Republic of China.
Good to meet you. Great pleasure to see you again.
Good to see you again.
Me too.
And we're going to have a very successful meeting, I have no doubt.
This is when they met. US President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping projected a picture of control of the situation, even as both sides announced victory after the meeting in Busan, South Korea. Trump, as is his wont, rather loudly, the Chinese in a more restrained manner. Even their opening comments reflected their respective styles. Trump said, "We are going to have a fantastic relationship." Xi said, "On many issues, we do not see eye to eye."
我也很高兴看到再次当选以来30多次的不就保持着密切的联系，在我们的共同引领下，中美关系往上增进。前几天，两国经贸团在京都举行新语座谈，就解决各自当前的主要关切大问题。因为我们今天的会晤提供了必要条件，中美两国国情不同，难免有一些分歧。作为世界前两大经济体，时而也会有摩擦，这很正常。面对风浪的挑战，我和总统先生作为掌舵人，应当把握好方向价值。当然，中美关系这是大的平稳前行。
It's a great honor to be with a friend of mine, really for a long time now. Very, very distinguished and respected President of China. And we will be having some discussions. We've already agreed to a lot of things, and we'll agree to some more right now. But President Xi is a great leader, a great country, and I think we're going to have a fantastic relationship for a long period of time.
Trump brought the tariffs down by 10% immediately on Chinese imports. The Chinese, on the other hand, said they had agreed to relax rare earth exports to the United States to some extent. Later, it was clarified that the tariff climb down was limited to fentanyl supplies penalties, which means we might be back to square one soon. Ultimately, we might have just seen Act 1 of the jousting match between the world's two biggest economies. I personally quite liked how Xi Jinping called the G2 big economies and not superpowers. Downplaying your cards is always a better strategy than overexposing your strengths, particularly when you are an underdog, which China still claims to be. In a Thucydides trap, as it is called, for geopolitical hegemony with the United States, the Chinese have played the poker little better and are perhaps the only major nation to have looked in the eye of Trump's America, matching his steps on the trade war. If Trump thought he could get away with some kind of mind games just ahead of his meeting with Xi by announcing resumption of nuclear tests after a gap of 33 years, China shrugged it off with a foreign ministry mandarin counseling on restraint and leaving it there. There's a reason why China can get away with this. They are now almost equal in size. Warship for warship, submarine for submarine, fighter for fighter, dollar for dollar. And they have worked for decades to build muscle to stare down the United States. Only 20 years ago, this was not so. Sometime in 2006, the then President Hu Jintao was visiting the United States. The American press was having fun, punning on the Chinese leader's name, Hu. The state dinner became an occasion to lampoon the visiting dignitary by the Bush team. But Jintao remained unruffled. His composure was classic: bide your time, conduct, knowing fully well China was not yet there. Militarily speaking, those who knew saw it coming. There were 2 US Air Force colonels on a sabbatical at the American campus where I was doing a short-term fellowship. In between breaks, we would catch up, and the 2 officers would get animated while discussing China. You could literally see their hearts pounding, discussing China's war machine. And this was 20 years ago. It has taken that much time for the entire DC ecosystem to come to terms with the rise of the Chinese dragon. This week, the Rand Corporation, the bellwether policy think tank sitting at the head of the American military-industrial complex, came out with a study on United States' relationship with China. It can be seen as marking a tectonic shift in American strategic thinking on managing Beijing's heft. Till now, it's been received wisdom that America is going all out to contain China. That if it comes to pass, America would militarily defend Taiwan. That the entire edifice of the Trump's tariff war has at its foundation a China containment strategy. That pivot to India was a subset of contain China strategy. That Indo-Pacific was a way to strengthen American strategic presence in the Chinese backyard. The Rand paper cuts all this noise. Hello, China. We are here to coexist, not contain. That's the message. Let me get deeper. Titled Stabilizing the US-China Rivalry, the paper argues that 6 somewhat connected principles must guide future conversations in the United States on China. 1. The US should accept the legitimacy of the Communist Party of China. And that itself is huge, given the kind of condescension one sees on the streets of New York and DC about the CCP. 2. Re-establish several trusted lines of communication between senior officials on both sides. Another proof of a humble climb down. 3. Improve crisis management practices. Now that's okay. 4. Create specific new agreements to limit friction over cyber-related issues. Well, that's a big one given Chinese muscle in cyberspace. 5. Promote nuclear deterrence. Guess what? The paper came only days before Trump announced resumption of nuclear testing. And finally, 6. Seek modest cooperative ventures on interests that overlap or relate to humanitarian concerns. If I connect the dots through these 6 principles, there's one single theme that emerges. China has arrived, and that best American interest is served in engaging rather than containing the dragon. It is interesting that the paper delves in quite some detail on the Taiwan question. And I thought it was the hugest takeaway. Taiwan is effectively thrown under the bus. Rand not only suggests that America should stay clear, but it also goes on to reassure China that the reunification objective can be achieved without bloodshed. Chinese tabloid The Global Times had some fun going through the report. On the suggestion that America make the prospect of war as hazardous and uncertain as possible for China on Taiwan, the newspaper mocked thus, and I quote, "Perhaps the hazardous and uncertain reality is on Washington's side. The US tried and failed to inject democracy into Iraq at the beginning of this century, and just a few years ago, the US left Afghanistan as it was unable to destroy the Taliban. For anyone to argue that the US could go to war with China and come out victorious would be extremely naive." Unquote. Imagine. It does not stop there. The study goes on to accuse the Mandarin-speaking so-called China experts in Washington, D.C. to be doing a disservice to the cause of a stable US-China relationship with their hawkish positions. These respected authorities fueled an increasingly common view that Beijing had well-established specific and uncompromising intentions that make almost any form of effort to create a meaningful equilibrium on specific issues pointless, the study says. One could literally smell a CCP operation through the 115 pages, but for the fact that RAND is fully financed by the American war machine, the Department of War, the Department of State, among others. Let me summarize the three most important recommendations. 1. It rejects the notion that a victory is possible for the United States in its rivalry with China. If you can't beat them, join them. That's why the suggestion of accepting the legitimacy of the Communist Party. A geopolitical surrender of this scale perhaps happened last in 1991-92, when the USSR crumbled under its own weight. This seems like the American version of a controlled landing of a flight caught in crosswinds just ahead of a touchdown disaster. The report actually says that a military victory is an impossibility. The second key recommendation follows from the first, which is to accept coexistence. To that end, both sides should accept, in ways that are deeply ingrained and broadly shared among decision-making officials, that some degree of modus vivendi must necessarily be part of the relationship. Third is, of course, the Taiwan question. Once you have surrendered all the possibility of a military challenge, Taiwan is pretty much left to fend for itself, or thrown under the bus. The paper says it in so many words that the United States of America should not oppose peaceful unification of Taiwan with the Chinese mainland. What the heck? The paper goes on to suggest that America should go a step further and create incentives for Beijing to pursue gradual approaches to realizing the dream of reunification. Hold on, it's still not over. Then the paper goes on to counsel Taiwan to not escalate tensions with China. The paper explicitly criticizes Taiwan's Lai Ching-te, the present president, for his statements asserting Taiwan is sovereign, and says that Washington should use its potential leverage over Taiwan to limit its activities that upset the status quo. Ditto for Philippines. The paper says that Manila should avoid provocations and that the United States should tone down its military activities in the South China Seas, or at least make them less visible. When such a think tank as RAND makes recommendations this deferential to a strategic competitor, it's not out of kindness of heart. They are anything but peaceniks. It's because they realize that the material balance of power has dramatically shifted. Brace for it. China has arrived, and America is receding in a shell. Just that it is trying to do it on its own terms of disengagement under the Trump administration. It has been a persistent theme of this show that we are living in a post-American world. If that be the case, then it is to the credit and farsightedness of the Modi government to have not bitten the American bait on the Quad or Indo-Pacific. There was this itch among some in the geostrategic community in New Delhi that let's go for it and militarize Quad, for example. Some wise men in the Modi government saw ahead and resisted. The downhill roller coaster of India-United States relations of last 9 months has proved the vision to be so right. We are in good hands. Moving on.
अगर मल्ला का बेटा उप मुख्यमंत्री बन सकता तो क्या आदम का बेटा मुख्यमंत्री नहीं बन सकता? हमको जवाब हुआ। अगर मल्ला का बेटा उप मुख्यमंत्री बन सकता तो क्या मोहम्मद का बेटा नहीं बन सकता मुख्यमंत्री? मेरे भाई, फैसला आपको करना है। 17% है, 3% है, और 14% है, 14% है तेजस्वी, और आप देते हैं टिकट उनको कितना, 14 है तो 36% टिकट दिया। जो 17% है उनको क्या दिया, उनको लॉलीपॉप दिया और बोला कि बेटा चूसते रहना।
This was AIMIM chief Asaduddin Owaisi delivering a stumpy speech at a Bihar campaign rally, or rather inciting the audience to think about community first. A deeply troubling thought, given the trauma of partition we have gone through once, owing to this very idea of proportional communal representation. At first glance, the demand appears rooted in democratic principles. After all, democracy itself is a game of numbers. But beneath the surface lies a complex history of communal representation, political tokenism, and the unintended consequences of identity-based politics, going back to our freedom struggle. What began as Jinnah's 14 points in Delhi of 1929 ended with India's asundering along communal lines in 1947. The Muslim League won the support of a large section of Muslims, a majority of those who voted in the 1946 provincial and constituent assembly elections. The election was seen as a mandate for the 1947 partition. The 14 points of Jinnah got amplified and gained mainstream currency among Muslims a year later in 1930, when the likes of Allama Iqbal picked up the thread and provided the ideological construct. According to Iqbal, the Muslims formed the most homogeneous nation within India and deserved a marked out territory for them. This was the 25th annual session of the Muslim League in the then Allahabad or today's Prayagraj. From Prayagraj, the idea reached the University of Cambridge, where a Muslim student, Rahmat Ali, crystallized it into the name Pakistan. From 1929 to 1933, it took all of 4 years for the idea of Pakistan to take a concrete shape. The demand for proportional representation and separate electorates created a mindset that political power must mirror religious demographics, a slippery slope that culminated with 1947. Rahmat Ali was in all likelihood a British deep state operation. He was not studying any particular course at Cambridge and had no means to justify or sustain his rather lavish lifestyle in London and beyond. It was clear that the ideas and the monies came from the India office of the government looking to balkanize India before the British left. Pandit Nehru was left aghast at the 1946 results and disappointed that all the secular posturing by the Congress came to a naught. After a visit to the Bundelkhand region in the aftermath of the elections, a dejected Nehru wrote to Rajaji that for the masses of the region, it did not matter what position the leadership under Mahatma Gandhi took. They had all turned to their religion as a pivot to politics. Those Muslims who were against partition could be divided into 3 categories or groups. One, who had their heart for Pakistan, but thought that it was a logistical nightmare to mass migrate to a new land, leaving all property behind. Second were those from the Deobandi school who thought that division would weaken the Muslims of the subcontinent, as the almost parity of numbers with Hindus would get divided, and that in the independent India, Muslims would become a minority. Third group belonged to supremely patriotic Muslims who thought of India as an indivisible motherland. It is this set of patriotic or nationalistic Muslims who face the maximum brunt of abuse from both the sides, the Hindu and Muslim communalists alike. The former finding them silent supporters of the Islamists and the latter finding them lesser Muslims. It's a long list of names, hundreds and thousands perhaps. The likes of Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, Hakim Ajmal Khan, Asaf Ali, Abbas Tayyabji, Saifuddin Kichlu, M.A. Ansari, Ashfaqullah Khan, just to name a few. But unfortunately, they never carried the weight within their own community the way the radicals did.
the famous address of Azad from the Jama Masjid in Delhi post-independence, where he lamented how his own community cut his hands and chopped his tongue and left him ineffective and powerless, buttresses the 1946 argument. The apologia given by those who find in the 1946 numbers the discomfort of taking the blame for partition is that this was a limited franchise of those who were the elites. The restricted franchise in 1946 was provided for in the Government of India Act 1935, according to which farmers, small shopkeepers, traders, etc. were excluded from electoral rolls. But despite these exclusions, roughly 20% of the masses were eligible to vote. Of course, on both the sides, Hindus and Muslims. If you look at random sampling methods utilized by psephologists these days, the size of the sample based on which they make predictions is about 1% or less. At 3%, most opinion or exit polls get it predominantly right. Which means at 20%, the Muslim franchise that voted in 1946 was representative enough of the Muslim mind at that time. But we digress. Let's pull back to the 14 points of Jinnah, of which proportional representation was one. Among them was ensuring adequate representation for Muslims in legislatures and elected bodies without undermining their majority status wherever they were present in majority. As a corollary to the representation in legislatures, the 14 points of Jinnah demanded fair representation for Muslims in government services, then required 1/3 Muslim representation in central and provincial cabinets as ministers. Jinnah wanted blanket prohibition on passing any bill opposed by 3/4 of the minority community. You get the drift. So when Owaisi says, give him a deputy chief minister in Bihar because his community has 17% vote share, it does not end there. Next would be the Council of Ministers, and then the IAS, IPS, the IFS, then proportional representation at all levels of government in the state and districts. And then, why stop at Bihar? Why not the entire country? Those 14 points marked parting of ways between the Muslim League and the Indian National Congress. Look at the irony. It was not Modi or Shah who called those 14 points ridiculous. It was Rahul Gandhi's great-grandfather, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, who found them utterly divisive. Today, the Congress gets support from Owaisi in the Jubilee Hills bypolls in Hyderabad. The 14 points of Jinnah, by the way, also called for separation of Sindh from the then Bombay province. A prophetic Veer Savarkar called this a prelude to India's partition, which materialized in less than 2 decades. Coming back to Owaisi, this is not the first time that the AIMIM chief has waded into proportional representation as an issue. This is, of course, not the last time either. It is unfortunate that 80 years after independence, the Muslim leaders have to fall back on a plank that formed the root cause of the country's division. His campaign pitch has led to a comic situation where he gets attacked more by the secular cohort than the BJP. Owaisi has been called Hyderabadi Biryani not by the communal right wing, but by secular Pappu Yadav, firmly aligned with the Congress and the Mahagathbandhan in Bihar. A couple of weeks back, I did a podcast with veteran journalist Shahid Siddiqui on his life in politics. He lamented the fact that he could not win from a non-Muslim seat despite all the credentials of being a liberal Muslim. And he was not Muslim enough for the so-called Muslim seats where the minorities decide the winner. This then is the crux or problematic of the issue. Not whether a Muslim can win from Simanchal in Bihar or Bhiwandi in Maharashtra, but whether a Muslim can win from Chandni Chowk in Delhi or Ahmedabad East in Gujarat. For that to happen, many stereotypes would need to be broken. Mr. Owaisi does not seem to be having the stomach for that. Thanks for watching.
Bharat 1 Minute, brought to you by Canara Bank. Together we can.
Tamil Nadu's Chief Minister and DMK President M.K. Stalin chairs an all-party meeting to discuss and coordinate a united opposition against the Election Commission of India's special intensive revision of electoral rolls in the state of Tamil Nadu. All the DMK Alliance party leaders will participated in fact in the meeting. The BJP and AIADMK and Vijay TVK have expressed that they won't attend this all-party meeting over the SIR issue. The Indian Air Force organized Shekho India Air Force Marathon 2025 in Rajasthan's Jodhpur district in memory of Flight Lieutenant Nirmaljit Singh Shekhon, a recipient of the Paramveer Chakra. On the issue of Election Commission's SIR exercise, BJP leader Dilip Ghosh said that around 1.5 crore Bangladeshi Rohingyas and infiltrators are living here in Bengal. They are voters here, and those who are not citizens here will be wiped out, and it will be difficult for the TMC to win. And he also alleged that the booth level officers are being intimidated by the TMC amid the SIR row, which is now blazing once again in West Bengal.
Co-powered by Century Ply Club Prime. Raho befikar.
भारत की अपनी दुकान इंडिया सोना, अपने देश का सामान इंडिया सोना, इंडिया सोना,
इंडिया सोना।
केसरिया से मन जोगी हुआ रे, दिल झूमे देखो मतवारा हुआ रे, केसरिया से मन जोगी हुआ।
हर पल मनाओ केसरी त्योहार। विमल, बोलो जुबान केसरी।
Some places feel like they've been waiting for you, where every piece speaks of legacy, from diamonds that celebrate ambition to festive gold that honors tradition. LD Sons.
MDH की हल्दी मिर्ची धनिया करे कमाल, ये रंग दे, ये खुशबू दे, ये तीखा, ये कम पड़े, क्या निराला MDH मसाला।
इसको घर पे लगाओगे तो शादी का तो पता नहीं, पर घर पक्का नहीं टूटेगा।
रुंगटा नहीं तो घर स्ट्रॉन्ग नहीं। रुंगटा स्टील TMT बार एकदम सॉलिड।
पहाड़ों में हाइकिंग शिप भी बन सकती है।
थोड़े में ज्यादा स्वाद, यही तो है इसकी खास बात। वाओ मम्मा, क्या स्वाद है। अरे मेरे